This video lesson is all about question 2D, which is the language analysis question on your First Language English paper 1. If you would like to follow along with this lesson, then this worksheet here that you'll need is linked below this video. Do make sure that you download it because it's got everything that you'll need, including the text, a space for you to write, the structure, some sentence starters, and the mark scheme. If you're a teacher, you can also download these resources for your student. It's all free. It's on the website linked below. My question then, let's start to engage our brains. What do you already know about question 2D, the language analysis question? Have a think. What can you remember about it? So question 2D is on your reading paper, which is worth 50% of your final grade for First Language English. Now on paper 1, you will have 3 big questions. So question 1 will give you some basic comprehension questions and a summary task. Question 2 will give you some short answer vocabulary style questions, followed by the language analysis question. And question 3 is your extended response, where you'll have to read a text and respond to it, writing your own newspaper, magazine, letter, diary, interview, or speech. Here is an example question, and it's also the question that we're going to answer today. So question 2D will always look something like this. Reread paragraphs 1 and 2. Paragraph 1 begins "Lights up in New York City" and introduces the setting of the busy city of New York. Paragraph 2 begins "in a dizzying spin" and describes the various types of people found on the streets of New York. Explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. Write about 200 to 300 words. Up to 50 marks are available for the content of your answer. So what do you need to do then? You're going to be given a longer text, and question 2D will pick out 2 paragraphs that you're going to analyse. Now this longer text will be used later on also for your question 3. So it's good that you can become familiar with the text now before doing that longer answer later. So as I've said then, you'll be given 2 paragraphs and they will be clearly listed. Do make sure that you only answer on these 2 paragraphs, because if you pick quotes from elsewhere, you will get no marks for it. It has to be from these 2 paragraphs. Then from those 2 paragraphs, you have to pick out 3 examples, 3 quotes that you're going to analyse. So that means that you're going to have 6 images in total that you're going to analyse, 3 per paragraph. Cambridge want you to really focus on the use of imagery. So what images has the writer used? Why? What effect does it create? They do give you a recommended word count, but don't count your words. Cambridge won't count your words. Don't waste your time. So just completely ignore that. Depends on the size of your handwriting, but I would say you should write about 1.5 to 2 sides. Like, here's the A4 here and here. That's all that you need to do. And you'll get up to 15 marks for this answer too. So to summarise, you'll be given 2 paragraphs from a longer text to analyse. You have to pick 3 images from each paragraph, 6 images in total, explain the meaning of the quotation, and analyse the effect of the images in those paragraphs. You should analyse word choice and the effect on the reader, and you don't need to pick out any language devices. Notice nowhere in that question did it say anything about language devices. This brings me nicely onto my next slide then. What do you not need to do? Do not look out for language devices. You don't need to do it. Story time. My Year 11's on their mock exam. We also study literature, so their terminology, literature terminology is great. Now on question 2D, they went away and they looked for language devices. They spoke about extended metaphors. They spoke about semantic fields. They really went to town analysing it. But because they did this, they didn't actually hit the mark scheme very well. So my big piece of advice really is don't try to be too clever. Just follow the structure that I'm going to give you in this video lesson and you're going to do very well. But you don't need to do anything as advanced as picking out metaphors and analysing the metaphor. Just focus on words and images and simply stating the effect. You also should not analyse the other paragraphs, only analyse the 2 paragraphs that Cambridge specifically give you. And you do not need to give more than 3 images per paragraph. So only giving 3 per paragraph. Don't waste your time doing more than that. And I've said it already, but I'm going to say it again. Do not deviate from the structure that I'm going to teach you in this lesson. What is the structure, you ask? Well, here it is. How to answer question 2D. So what you're seeing here is a paragraph, right? So you'll have to repeat this twice. So firstly, you're going to begin with an overall effect sentence. In that sentence, you're going to simply say, what is the effect of the whole paragraph, right? So summarize the effect of that paragraph as a whole. Then you're going to pick out a quote. Make sure that the quotes that you pick are strong, juicy images, because if you don't have the quotes that are on the mark scheme, Cambridge don't credit you. You have to have the exact quotes in their mark scheme, which I think is kind of crazy, but I don't make the exam. So be really careful that when you're picking your quotes, you're like, yes, this has to be on the mark scheme. After you've picked out your quote, then you're going to explain the meaning. Now, students, especially A-star students, often forget to do this because they're like so excited to start analysing that they don't think that they need to do something as basic as give a definition. But when the examiner is marking your work, they're checking to see, okay, does this person understand the overall effect of the paragraph? Can they pick 3 quotations? Can they explain what this means? Like, do they literally, explicitly understand the quotation? And then can they explain the effects? Can they give the implicit meaning of the quote? So if you skip out that step of explaining the basic meaning of the quote, you're going to lose some marks. And that's as simple as saying the word glittering means sparkling, right? Give a synonym, give a definition. After that, you're going to give connotations. So pick a powerful word from your quote and state its connotations. If you haven't studied connotations in class yet, it basically means what a word makes you think of, what associations you have with the word. So for example, the word red has connotations of danger, passion, love, etc. The word angel has connotations of heaven, religion, innocence, etc. So what does that word associate with for you? Technically, you don't need to do this in order to score highly for this question, but I found that the connotations for students acts as like a safety net. It protects you because if you forget to do meaning or you forget to do effect or you don't do effect very well, often you kind of hit on it with your connotations. So I really recommend that you do connotations for question 2D. Finally, you're going to state the effect of your quotation. Why did the writer include it? How would it make the reader feel? What is the deeper meaning of your quotation? What would that actually look like? Well, here's an example paragraph. It's from the Sea Hotel. I can't remember the exact title of the past paper, but I'll link it below in case you want to see. The main point really is just to see, what would a good analysis paragraph look like. So it would look like this. The overall effect of paragraph 10 is to show a magical and romanticised view of the underwater hotel. Here I'm giving my overall effect. Firstly, the image of shell encrusted means that the doorstep was completely covered by shells. This has connotations of being decorated by gems, showing how precious the location is and how the hotel blends in with its natural surroundings. So I've got my quotation and then I'm explaining what it means. What does shell encrusted mean? Something completely covered by shells. Then I'm giving connotations, right? So decorated by gems, like by a precious jewel. And then I'm giving the effect. It's showing the location is precious and special and it's blending in with its natural surroundings. Great, next one. Secondly, the image of clownfish darting means that the fish are rapidly zigzagging all over. Darting has connotations of being agile, light and free, and this might reflect Jenny's own excitement. So I've given my quotation, darting, I've explained what darting means, it means zigzagging, I'm giving the connotations, agile, light and free, and then I'm explaining the effect, reflecting the character's excitement. Finally, the image of the anemone, can I say that word? Anemone's swirling fingers means that they are twisting and wrapping around. Swirling has connotations of magic and dancing, suggesting that even the landscape is performing for Jenny. So once again, we've got a quotation. I'm explaining the definition of swirling, twisting, wrapping around, and giving a connotation, magic, dancing, and I'm explaining the effect the landscape is performing for Jenny. So all of this together would be 15 out of 15. Obviously, you'd need to replicate it in your second paragraph, but this is the kind of thing that you are aiming to write today. Let me also just point out for you that the examiner will actually look for this. So the examiner will be ticking out Okay, does each paragraph have an overall effect? So I should have two overall effects, one for each paragraph. Does each paragraph have 6 quotations that are on my mark scheme? Does each paragraph have 6 meanings that are on my mark scheme or that I think are correct? Does each paragraph have 6 effects? They will literally count up and double check that you've done this. So it's really important that you do follow this structure, because if you don't, you're going to be losing those marks. Now, we've spoken about overall effect, and this is perhaps something that I think that my students find the hardest. So I went through all of the past papers. Yes, I know I haven't got a life, but I did that. I went through all of the past papers and I picked out the most common overall effects that seem to come up again and again. So if in doubt, try one of these, because these do seem to come up quite a lot. So often the overall effect of a paragraph might be to suggest that something is magical, that is romanticized, like through what's the phrase, rose-coloured glasses, to show that something is precious or treasured or like jewels comes up a lot, to suggest vulnerability, to show that something is innocent or evil. Don't know why this one comes up quite a lot, to show that something is water-like or fluid. That came up a couple of times, so don't know, but there you go. To show that something is awe-inspiring or that something is unstoppable. To create tension or to create contrast. For example, you might have a paragraph that describes the calm before the storm, so that would be contrast. To suggest relief or rejuvenation. To create a sense of humour. To create a sense of mystery or eeriness. To show that something is cliched, stereotypical, corny, cheesy. Or to be self-deprecating, to laugh at yourself. So I hope that this helps. It seemed to help my students. These are the most common overall effects. Give them a try. Now we're going to have a look at a question, the question 2D, and we've already read it out loud. It's right here on the screen again in case you've forgotten. And we are going to read a description called The View from the Other Side, which is a description all about New York City. This is on your worksheets, but I will put it up on the screen as we read along. Now, as we read it, you can see that the paragraphs we're going to analyse are going to be paragraphs 1 and 2, but I will read the full thing out for you. So text C, The View from the Other Side. Lights up on dazzling New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps, where fat cats prowl and ingenues seek fame, glory, or money, whichever comes first. Pan out and see the skyscrapers climbing into the heavens, their facades adorned with glimmering glass and steel, like modern-day castles touching the clouds. Each one vies for attention, a dazzling display of architectural prowess, creating a mesmerizing urban landscape that ignites the imagination. And perhaps, if we can zoom in close enough, we might see a solitary face peering out from the top of the tallest skyscraper, looking down, casting judgment or rolling his eyes with an apathetic sigh. For what happens below is nothing to be proud of. In a dizzying spin, we free fall from the lofty heights of those privileged few and come to a sharp halt on the gum-spattered ground. Quick, load in a new reel of film, and action. Pan across the street, through the toned legs sporting Malone Blahniks and leather suitcases. Malone Blahniks, by the way, are expensive designer high heels. And there, do you see? Huddled into a doorway sits a beggar. Is that acceptable to say anymore? Oh, homeless. And retake. Huddled into a doorway sits a homeless man, burrowed deep into his green overcoat on this brisk day in January. Weariness is etched into every line of his face, deep crags and gullies. Each wrinkle aches with struggle and hardship. And there, that's it, freeze frame. The man's hand outstretched, trembling, weathered and calloused. Out of focus is a sea of bustling bodies, smooth skin and purpose, whilst this man is the very picture of uncertainty. A question. Can you help me? Will you help me? Can you see me? And now a jump cut to a point of view shot. Yes, get down, get close to his eye level. Oh, stop moaning. This is cinema, darling. Can you see what he sees? Luxury cars zooming by, their owners carelessly talking on the phone, their eyes unfocused. The sticky hands of a 7-year-old girl gripping an iPhone, and his own rumpled reflection peering back at him from the window of a pristine and sparkling shop front. He averts his eyes. He does not want to see himself. And so instead he fixes his eyes upon the sky. Earlier on it had been bitterly cold, but bright, dry, the most important word to someone in his position. But now thick rolling clouds, like chariots of darkness, were barreling in from the west, their brooding presence casting a heavy shadow over the city, threatening to unleash a torrent at any moment. Perhaps he's thinking of those dry and safe in their Teslas. Little 7-year-old girls with homes to shelter in tonight. Shop windows that will soon be pummeled by rain unleashed from menacing clouds above. Or perhaps he thinks nothing at all, I don't know. We can add his thoughts during post-production. Pan out to a long shot, and in the midground, encircled by blackening clouds, the Statue of Liberty stands steadfast. Move to a medium shot, perfect. Her torch seems to flicker as dark clouds gather overhead, challenging the tempest and the turmoil that looms on the horizon. Her noble face, once a beacon of hope and compassion, bears a sombre expression, as if she mourns the deepening disparities plaguing the city she watches. Perhaps now is a good time to cue some incidental music? As the storm strengthens, the Statue of Liberty becomes a solitary figure amid the tempest, a lone sentinel watching over a city that teeters on, indifferent to its own moral. A lone sentinel watching over a city that teeters on, indifferent to its own moral precipice. The clouds like coal when the first fat raindrops fall on the ground, soaking the homeless man from crown to toe. Others scatter, but he stays. He has nowhere else to go. Credits roll as the scene fades to black. The man at the top of the skyscraper shuts his blinds, disgusted by the view outside. The Tesla speeds away. The little girl is dragged into a taxi by her father. Malono Blahnik-clad women rush into cocktail bars to pay $15 a drink while they wait out the storm. And our nameless, faceless man's eyes meet the lens of our camera. A challenge. Another question. Do you like what you see? I hope you enjoyed that description, which I actually wrote as an exemplar piece of work for a course that I'm making. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Now you have got a space in your worksheet for these 3 questions. How would you summarise the description? What do you think the writer's message is about New York? And why do you think that the writer chose to use cinematic language to frame their description? You can pause the video now and have a think about these questions. Firstly then, how would we summarise the description? So what literally, explicitly happens in this description? So this is a description all about New York City. It shows the glittering skyscrapers, the wealthy inhabitants, and also the homeless people who are ignored by society. The description is told from the perspective of a film director looking for subjects to record. What sort of personality do we think that she has? As a storm breaks in the city, we see that all of the other New Yorkers have somewhere warm and dry to go to, but the homeless man stays ignored in the rain with nowhere to go and no one who offers to help, including the director, who has been using him, I suppose, for her own purposes. What do you think the writer's message is about New York? Well, I am the writer. My aim was to criticise the inequality, and I thought that New York really represented the inequality of capitalist societies where you've got extreme wealth and extreme poverty side by side, and people with extreme wealth not really paying attention, not caring, not helping those in need. And why did the writer choose to use cinematic language to frame the description? I wanted to create a sense of rapid movement, like you're actually watching a film, but also a sense of voyeurism, that we're kind of watching something, observing something that we shouldn't really be watching or seeing, and how that commodifies people. It turns people into objects to be sold, right? So she captures the homeless man's image, doesn't pay him for it, doesn't ask him like if he needs help, doesn't offer to help him in any way, and he just essentially becomes something that she can sell in the form of a film. So the homeless man is just a subject for the director's film, but I don't even think that she sees him as a person, never mind a person worthy of help or interaction. I wanted to really show how often we look at things but don't truly see them, or that if we do see them, we don't necessarily act on them. At the end of the description, the man asks, "Do you like what you see?" And so that could be taken quite literally of like, do you like what you're watching in this film? But also, do you like what you see in terms of society, what we've created, what you're a part of? This cinematic technique, which I teach in my descriptive writing course, is really effective because it allows the reader to zoom into certain images and see New York from lots and lots of different angles, which is why I picked it for this description. So now we need to start our analysis, and a reminder, here is the structure: overall effect sentence, quote, meaning, connotations and effect. Here is paragraph 1 then. Take a second to reread it and think to yourself, what is the overall effect of this paragraph? If you had to put it into one sentence, what would you say that the effect is. Here is the overall effect according to the mark scheme. The overall effect of this paragraph is to showcase the dazzling grandeur and ambition of the stereotypical image of New York, whilst casting judgment on the extravagance of the extreme wealth in the city. So we've got this dazzling, grand, ambitious city, but it's very much the stereotype of New York. And you can tell that because it says the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps, right? So you've got like these stereotypical images of New York, like we might see in films or TV shows. You know, in TV shows, we do see the glimmering glass and steel skyscrapers, and it's mesmerizing. Often you have romantic Christmas films set in New York for this very reason. But we start to get the hint of this judgment when we zoom into the face at the top of the skyscraper. Who is it? You know, this person at the top of the skyscraper, is it the person that's climbed the ranks of capitalism and has won? I am at the tallest building, haha, I win. Or is it like a godlike figure, Ethan? And this person is looking down, casting judgment, rolling his eyes with an apathetic sigh. For what happens below is nothing to be proud of. So we're starting to see now, okay, we've got this contrast between the dazzling stereotypical image of New York, but also hinting towards the judgment at, you know, how wealthy this city is. Next up, I want you to zoom into an image. So we're going to zoom into this quote in bold. Modern day castles touching the clouds. So I want you to think about what is the meaning, how would you define it, explain it, the explicit meaning of this quote. What connotations does the word castle have? And what do you think the effect of this quotation is? Have a little think, make some notes, pause the video now. This is what the mark scheme says about your quotation. So the meaning is in green and the effect is in yellow. So the meaning of modern day castles touching the clouds, it is comparing skyscrapers to castles reaching high into the sky. Now, what is the effect? Well, castles are historic symbols of power, right? Who used to live in castles? Kings and queens, lords and ladies. Castles can also be seen as symbols of inequality between the ruler and the ruled. It can create a sense of majesty, of royalty, and also of dominance, right? Of looking down on your subjects. Similarly, it can also create a fantasy-like or fairy tale image, so it's kind of like overly romanticized view of New York, perhaps not a very realistic view of New York, as though New York is already a myth. Now, all you would need to do is get one of those effects. No one would ever expect you to get all of these in the exam. Did you manage to get close? Also, on the exam, for the effect, if you say something else that isn't on the mark scheme, but it makes sense, the examiner can give you the effect point for that. So don't worry too much. If you've got something else, if you think it's kind of along the same lines and it makes sense, you can give yourself the mark for that. How would this look actually written up then? The overall effect of paragraph 1 is to show the stereotypical view of New York as being grand and magical could also be criticised for its extreme wealth and inequality. Overall effect sentence. Firstly, the image of modern day castles touching the clouds means the skyscrapers are reaching high in the sky, creating a sense of dominance. This portrays New York City like a fairy tale city, yet castles have connotations of power, rulers, and the ruled, and might imply that New York has a huge distance between those with money and those below without. So far this is getting us 15 out of 15. And if you take a look, you can see here, I've got my quote, modern day castles touching the clouds. I've explained the meaning, means the skyscrapers are reaching high in the sky. I've got like more than one effect. Creates a sense of dominance, fairy tale city, rulers and the ruled, huge distance between those with money and those without, like 4 different effects there. You don't need to have that many. And I've also said the connotations of power, rulers and the ruled. Now what I want you to do is to finish off this paragraph. So you are going to try to write about 2 more quotes from that paragraph and finish off this example right here. So there's a space for you to do this right here in your worksheet. It says continue my example and here's the example. Then you'll pick 2 more images that you are going to analyse and write it here. Okay, pause the screen now, go away and write that and then come back and we'll go over the mark scheme for this section. Welcome back and I hope that your writing went well. I hope even more that you actually did the writing. Here is the mark scheme, and there's also a copy of this at the end of your worksheet. So, firstly, double check, did you get all of the quotations? Did you give the meaning, which are the bits in green? And did you get at least one correct effect, which are the bits in yellow? It's a few different slides, so don't panic if you can't see your quotes just yet. So, lights up on dazzling New York City, meaning sun rises, description begins. Effect, sounds like stage directions, like a performance, sets the stage for a glamorous portrayal of New York, creates a sense of wonder, as though New York is too bright to look at, like a jewel or something precious. Next image, where fat cats prowl and ingenues seek fame, money, or glory, meaning where rich people live and actors hope for success. Effect, contrasting characters of powerful and aspiring to be powerful people. Prowl suggests a competitive or predatory environment, predator and prey, right? Hints towards the American dream because everyone is hoping for something, everyone is seeking status, but ultimately it's superficial. What does fame, money, or glory even mean? It is meaningless. Image, skyscrapers climbing into the heavens, meaning extremely tall buildings reaching into the sky. Effect, creates a sense of awe or grandeur, symbols of achievement, represents people's ambition to reach new heights, as though otherworldly or magical. Image, facades adorned with glimmering glass and steel, meaning buildings decorated in shining glass and steel. Effect, a modern or futuristic city, sparkling like precious metal, adorned suggests something lovingly decorated. Glass and steel are both cold or harsh materials, perhaps like the lifestyle of the people who live there. Looks good, but it's actually cold and sad to live it. The next image is the modern day castles, so I'm not going to go over that again. Some more images. Each one vies for attention, meaning all the skyscrapers want to be noticed. Effect, makes the buildings seem alive. Even the buildings are competitive like the people, reinforces themes of ambition or success. Image, solitary face peering out from the top of the tallest skyscraper, meaning a single person looking out of the window. Effect, sense of isolation from those who are at the top, even those who succeed still aren't happy. A godlike figure, cast in judgment, creates a sense of mystery. Image, rolling his eyes with an apathetic sigh, meaning the figure shows disdain and or detachment from the city below. Effect, suggests indifference from those on top to those below them. So the people who are winning in the American dream really don't care about those beneath them. Suggests a cynical outlook of New York citizens, suggests that no one cares about the struggles of those below. Now is your turn. So I want you to do paragraph 2 completely by yourself. So you need to begin by looking at that paragraph and deciding what do you think the overall effect of the paragraph is. Then you need to find 3 images that match the overall effect. Do make sure that your images are juicy, that you're sure will be on the mark scheme. After you've done that, you're going to explain the meaning of your images by giving a definition or a synonym or explaining what the quote means. Then you're going to give connotations. Pick out one powerful word from your quotation and state what it makes you think of. What associations do you have with that word? Finally, you're going to state the effect of your quotation, and you're going to do this 3 times. If you're feeling stuck, here are some sentence starters that you can use to help you, and these are on your worksheet too. So it's over to you. It's time to get writing up your analysis of the second paragraph. Do pause now, and then I'll go through the mark scheme next. Welcome back, and I hope that your writing went well. I hope that you did do the writing. So now we're going to go through the mark scheme, and as we do this, do make sure you have got a different colour pen to hand so that you can mark your writing. So wherever you get the overall effect, which should be at the start of your paragraph, write an O and a tick. Wherever you correctly identify a quote that's on the mark scheme, put a Q and a tick. Wherever you correctly identify the meaning or definition, put an M and a tick, and wherever you find the effect, E and a tick. And then at the end, you'll be able to count it up, and that will give you a clue as to what mark an examiner might give your writing. So firstly then, the overall effect of paragraph 2. The overall effect of this paragraph is to suggest the stark contrast between privilege and poverty. So you need something there about contrast or juxtaposition between the wealthy and the poor. Something like that. Doesn't need to be written exactly as I have, but for sure, something about contrast, wealth, and poverty. So if you got that correct, write an O and a tick next to your overall effect. Now on to the mark scheme for paragraph 2. Image. Free fall from the lofty heights of the privileged few. Meaning. Move swiftly downward from the skyscrapers to the ground. Effect. Creates a dramatic sense of rapid descent. Emphasizes the difference between those on top and those below. Represents contrast between the privileged and marginalized people. Suggests a fall from grace or a fall from status. Alludes to issues of inequality highlighted by the description. Image. The gum spattered ground. Meaning, the floor littered in chewing gum. Effect. A gritty image of New York as an urban and littered city. Suggests the mundane and everyday aspects of New York. It's not actually anything special or magical at all. Contrasts with the glittering skyscrapers. Suggests New York isn't clean or well cared for. Symbolizes the less fortunate beggar who is sitting on the floor, much like the gum is on the floor, the beggar's on the floor. Suggests the neglect of the city. Image. The toned legs sporting Malono Blahniks and leather suitcases. Remember, these are expensive designer high heels. Meaning, the muscled legs wearing expensive designer heels and those holding briefcases. Effect. Suggests luxury and creates a fashionable image. Emphasizes material wealth, what you can possess, what you can own. Suggests excess money spent on things that don't really matter. Contrast with the beggar who has nothing, symbols of wealth and status. Image. Homeless man burrowed deep into his green overcoat. Meaning, homeless man huddled into his coat. Effect. Creates empathy for the homeless man. Suggests his vulnerability and exposure to harsh weather. Contrast with the wealthy individuals above him, suggests his need for shelter, highlights his lack of resources or a safe place to retreat to. Burrowed is an animal-like image. Burrow is also an animal's home. Image. Wariness is etched into every line of his face, deep crags and gullies. Meaning, tiredness is clear by the pronounced wrinkles on his face. Effect. Creates empathy, suggests a long, hard life. Contrast with the healthy people on the street, suggests the long-lasting effects of hardships on the man's body, aligns him with nature, because crags and gullies are things that you would find in nature. Image. The man's hand outstretched, trembling, weathered and calloused, meaning hand reaching out, shaking, aged and rough. Effect. Suggests desperation and vulnerability, a plea for help, contrasts his aged and rough hands with the smooth skin of those people around him, connotations of begging. Image. Sea of bustling bodies, smooth skin and purpose, meaning crowds of people with direction and healthy appearances. Effect. Suggests chaotic abundance of people in a busy city. Crowds of people contrast with the isolated figure of the homeless man. Contrasts his weathered skin with their healthy and smooth appearances. Contrasts the crowd's movement and sense of purpose with the homeless man's lack of purpose and movement as he has nowhere to go to. Image. Can you help me? Will you help me? Can you see me? Meaning, asks if the crowd care enough to help or even acknowledge the existence of the homeless man. Effect. Questions might echo the homeless man's pleas or what he wishes he could say. Suggests uncertainty and vulnerability. Prompts the reader to question their own empathy and individual responsibility. Let's now take a look at an exemplar of what a 15 out of 15 mark answer might look like for your paragraph 2, and then you can compare and see how similar or dissimilar your own writing was. So here's the exemplar. The overall effect of paragraph 2 is to contrast the poverty of the homeless man with the extreme wealth of New Yorkers. Firstly, the toned legs sporting Malono Blahniks and leather suitcases means that New Yorkers are healthy and own expensive designer accessories. The word leather has connotations of wealth and sophistication. This suggests the luxury, excess wealth and fashionable image of New York. By contrast, the image of the gum-spattered ground means that the floor is littered with chewing gum. The connotations of ground are bottom, the lowest and overlooked, much like the homeless man. This image might contrast with the glittering skyscrapers and suggest the neglect of the city. Finally, the image of weariness etched into every line of his face, deep crags and gullies, means that the homeless man's tiredness is marked by pronounced wrinkles. The word etched has connotations of being carved over time and something that is irreversible. This creates empathy as the reader realizes the long-lasting effects of a hard life on the man's physical health, contrasting with the healthy people around him on the street. If we break that down then, you can see that I am ticking off all of the things. So firstly, in bold is my overall effect paragraph, and then each of my 3 images I've highlighted in 3 different colours. And if you look, you can see each of them have got a quote, each of them have got the meaning, connotations, and the effect. So now you need to review your work. So you need to count up firstly, have you got all of those different sections? So have you got 1 overall effect sentence? Have you got 3 quotations? Have you got 3 meanings? And have you got 3 effects that are stated in the mark scheme? So go down the side of your work and annotate in the margin. You should tick your overall effect sentence, and that should come at the beginning of your paragraph. You should underline your quotes and write Q in the margin. You should have 3 quotes in the paragraph, no more, no less. You should circle your connotations. You can write a C in the margin if you like. Did you remember to give a connotation for all of your quotes? Squiggle the meanings like a wavy underline and write an M in the margin. Where did you explain the literal explicit meaning of your quote? Highlight the effect if you have a highlighter to hand and write E in the margin. Where have you explained the effect, the deeper meaning of the quote? And have a little reflection. Out of the 3 images, which one do you think that you analysed the best and why? Write a star next to your best bit of analysis and explain why you think that was the best bit of your analysis. That's all very well and good, I can hear you saying, but like, how many marks have I got? So let me try to explain. Obviously, it's hard for me to tell you how many marks you've got without actually seeing your work, but this is a rough guide. So if you have got 6 quotations, at least 5 meanings and at least 5 effects, then you probably are going to be in level 5, so somewhere between 13 and 15 marks. Now obviously if you've got 5 meanings and 5 effects, you're probably going to be more at 13, and if you've got 6, then it's going to be more at 15. Part of this is also going to depend on how imaginative or interesting your connotations and effects are. Like if it's a little bit basic, like you've said the meaning, you've said the effect, but it's not particularly clever, you might have 666, but you might not actually be in this top band. So this is what I'm saying. It's like a rough guide, but it's not a guarantee. Now, you might be in band 4, scoring between 10 to 12 if you have 5 or more quotations. Really, you should still have 6 quotations here, but the examiner might let you in here if you've got 5 quotations and the rest is really good. And this is, by the way, for like the entire piece of writing. So you might want to consider your first paragraph with that, or just divide the numbers by 2. So 6 becomes 3. If you have 4 or more meanings and 4 or more effects, and your analysis is clear, it makes sense, but it's not particularly imaginative, probably you're going to be between 10 to 12. Now you're likely going to be in band 3, 7 to 9 marks if you have at least 5 quotations, 3 meanings, and 0 to 3 effects. So if you're getting like roughly half of the meanings and you're kind of doing the effects, but it's quite basic, you're going to be here. And then 4 to 6 marks in band 2 is if you have 4 or more quotations, you have between 1 or 2 meanings, and these are basic and no effects, you're probably going to be here. So notice that if you want to score highly, you have to have the quotations, really. It's kind of impossible to do well unless you're getting at least 5 of the quotations that are on the mark scheme. If you didn't get all of the quotations in this practice, don't feel too bad because it's one that I made myself, and all of the paragraphs are filled with images, so I had to cut some out. So, you know, take it with a pinch of salt, but really it is very, very important that you are honing in on your quotations. Hopefully from looking at the mark scheme now and looking at the detailed breakdown, you can see why it's so important to follow my structure. So you need to have your overall effect sentence, your quotations, your meaning, your connotations, and your effect. And if you don't do that, you're really going to struggle to hit this mark scheme. So important, in fact, that I'm going to finish with that as my final slide. I do hope that you found this video lesson useful. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Head over to totally.co.uk for more resources, video lessons and courses, and I'll see you next time.